Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Boring Show. It's been a while. I'm here with Fitz. Hello,
Hey,
Fitz.
hello, Philip. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, and by here I mean we're obviously not at the same room, but whatever. It looks like it. In post production, they will put us in the same room, I'm sure.
Yes.
Okay, today we are going to talk about adaptive design. What I mean by that, there's many definitions of it, but basically it means I have an app, I want it to look a certain way in on a mobile phone, and a certain way on a tablet, and a certain way on a PC. And for that, I actually thought maybe we don't want to go with we normally usually use the Hacker News app,
Mm-hmm.
and that's great. But I think I couldn't imagine how to make it work or what to show exactly in the Hacker News app, because what people generally mean by the adaptive thing is I want like a list view, and then like on a phone I want a list view first, and you click and you go into a detail page. But on a tablet or a computer screen, I want that panel on the left all the time there, and then just clicking through changes my view on the right.
Right. Yeah.
and and so that doesn't, like, I couldn't figure out any way to do it on Hacker News. I mean, like, probably
Yeah. Like you could maybe envision like I don't know, the list of the articles on the one side, and then the body of the article, or
the
maybe
body,
the
yeah, yeah.
comments or
But
something on the
yeah, yeah.
main view.
No, you're right. The body would make sense, but that's like that that's a view of basically a website. But anyway, so we'll try, and I started something from scratch, and we'll see if that works. Another thing that we're doing completely newly is we're not like, I'm not sharing my screen with Fitz. He's actually in my code right now. And
Yeah,
he can do anything.
it's a wild bit of technology that has come about with everything being remote. We're sharing an IDE remotely, and so we'll see how it works. We both can control the cursor at the same time, so hopefully we don't mess each other up. But it's pair programming, and this is what the Boring Show is about. So we're gonna give it a shot and see how it goes.
Absolutely, yes. And I'm glad that this works. We absolutely installed it just today. We have zero experience with it, so we'll see how it goes. All right, so first thing I want to show you is my little trick when you start a new project in Flutter and you see all these very important comments in the code, and you don't want them there. And you could do many things, but what I do is I just search and replace using regex like this, and I just replace all, and then I format everything, and I'm done. So I just replaced all the comments there, and the regex is very, like, it's just / dot star. So once you do this enough times, you don't mind the comments.
That's a
Okay.
nice little trick. I think my tactic for that is I go to the my app, and I just delete it all, and then I start from the new stateless app, the stateless widget, which is
Yeah.
kind of like starting from a blank main, but you know, it's at least something.
No, this is good. I realize now that, yeah, I'm kind of, I would have to remember like material app and stuff like this, which I should. But anyway, all right. So now, one thing that I kind of did beforehand is that I found a generator of JSONs, like a lorem ipsum JSON, I think it's called, which gives you some random, like completely random, made up data that you can play with. And so what I thought today would be pretty easy to do is to have like an app that just shows some data, like structured data. What I see here is it's a list of people with their names, and there's a bunch of little pieces of information about them. And so we could have that list of people, as just like, tapping on their name. And then if you tap on that name on, let's do the mobile phone first, we show some random data for them, and then we're done.
So
What
this
do
is
you think?
kind of like a contacts app in some ways.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's do it.
All right. So let's just remove all this. I just realized I have zero state management. Well, we'll see. All right, so start removing stuff. Column, we don't need the counter. Do you see all this, by the way?
It's a little delayed, but I do see it.
Okay, good. And then we have the children. All right, I'm going to create the people. I'm having second guesses about the starting from scratch now, but we'll see. All right.
Yeah, I think it's with whatever, wherever we take this particular episode, I think it's a good lesson in general. When you're designing a real app, it's helpful to think about these things as early as possible. Maybe not necessarily from the start of writing your app, but as early as possible.
Yes.
Because you don't know what size of device your users are going to have. And so, like, we might test on a mobile phone emulator, we might test on a tablet, we might test with a desktop window, whatever it happens to be, but your users are going to be on a different size. So it's really helpful to think about the overall presentation and layout of your app and how it's going to adapt to the different sizes as you go about. A long time ago, I heard a bit of advice from a designer that was saying, one thing, and this goes for accessibility as well as adaptivity, is look at your device and design it for the smallest screen possible, and then design it again for the largest screen possible. And sometimes things in between can, they'll be a little bit different, but that's a great start to think about is when you compress it down to like this tiny little box, what does that look like versus when you have as much real estate as possible on one of those like giant 50-inch curved weird things, right? What does that look like versus the smallest? And so I think even if when we today decide that there's a lot of setup that has to go into an adaptive app that is not about adaptivity or responsiveness, then I think it's still a good lesson to know that checking this out and thinking about it and working on it from the beginning is really, really helpful. So Philip, where have you ended up? I'm kind of following along, but
yes. So I thank you for covering for me, because I in the meantime hopefully created some kind of a data class of the people that we'll be showing, and so let's see if we can actually use it here. So that would be I use final, but to be honest, var person in people. Making sure that we import it. And for each of them, we'll just do, let's do a list style. This should be a list and not a column. List view, I mean.
Okay, so you're having the primary view of the app right now is going to be a list of the people in our contacts JSON.
Yes.
Cool deal. So that's starting to get towards our idea of one of the easiest assemblies of an app is the list of something and then the detail of the items in that list on the one side. So I think yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. We have this, which is great. I kind of want to add a picture of the person.
As like the leading image or something?
Yes. So that will be image, network, and I think this even gives us a picture, yes. Oh, well. we could just grab this, to be honest. I think it's the same for everyone.
Oh, yeah. So in reality, you'd want to get the value of the picture key, but we'll just do
Yeah.
the URL direct.
You know what? Let's do it right. So string picture and this picture and picture.
Cool.
Generally, you would want to have something more clever here, but person, then me, you know, like I don't want to parse the whole JSON by. Oh, URL is not null, is not true. Interesting. Oh, is this because, yeah, okay. That's it? Really? That's kind of sad. Okay. It just says 32 by 32. I thought it would be like a picture of someone. All right. Okay. All right. So we have this, and now we probably want people to be able to go to the detail. So we need a detail widget. And for that, I'm just going to do like a very simple class person detail.
Okay.
And that's because it needs a scaffold because
So that's a good question, and I think this was something I was thinking about when we were talking about it ahead of time. Is how do you structure these different widgets differently when one is a new page or a new view versus one that's going to come up alongside of it? And I don't know the answer to that, but it's, it's something we should talk about. So what, I guess the first thing would be like, what does a scaffold do, and why would we want to have this detail widget have its own scaffold?
That's okay. So yeah, very good point. We generally, the scaffold is just things that make an app have the Chrome. So for example, the app bar is part of the scaffold. If we had a drawer, right, like it would be part of the scaffold. Anything that kind of overlaps the body of the app from each side, that's the scaffold. It also gives us the ability to show, what do you call them? Toast?
The snack bars?
Snack bars, yes, thank you.
Or the floating action button.
So all of that we need. If we have a separate, like on a mobile phone, we have a separate screen, we need a scaffold most of the time. And we will need it when we want this on the mobile phone, but we don't want that for desktop when we have that widget just sitting next to the list, right?
Yeah.
So on a just to be clear, so on a phone that's going to be like this, and I click here and then I go into the detail. On a tablet or on a desktop, we would have that detail over here in this area, and so we don't want that to have its own Chrome and its own like app feel.
Yeah, there are cases where nested scaffolds are useful. This may not be one of them.
Yes. So you know what? I think I'll make the person detail pure, right? Okay. So this is something, by the way, if you're coming from Android, you may be familiar with fragments, and these were a similar idea of like a fragment can be either on its own, or it could be put as an iframe, another thing that could be put together to make a panel, basically. And in Flutter, we don't have that because we don't need that, because everything on the screen is a widget. So we can just make a column, and that can be one part of the column can be one fragment. It's just a widget, and the other part of the column is another, or a row or whatever. So what I'll do is, on a whim, I'm just going to do the person detail like completely pure, and that means I'll just do a column again, I guess. Let's start with that. And that will have some children, and the first one will be the name of the person, which implies that we need the actual person here. person, and of course, person detail takes the person. Person name, very exciting widget, text, person, phone. So we show something new.
This is a really nice widget. I like columns with just 2 text fields. They're my favorite widgets.
Yes, yeah, you're a minimalist.
Yeah,
is what I call it. All right, so well, let's see what happens actually if we just use that pure widget, so that you understand the value of scaffold y'all out there. So on tap, we're just gonna do navigator of context can write push route, and that's going to be a material page route, and that's going to be a builder. And now I don't remember what that builder takes.
I think it takes a context, right?
Oh, just the context. Cool. So just context. And we are going to do the person detail with the person. Everything works as we'd expect. So now if I tap, I just realized you can see it. Fitz, you can see the app. It's great.
It's all right. The benefit of a minimalist design is that it's relatively easy to imagine what it looks like.
Yes. So I'm clicking on Clement's Waters, and I get this terrible black screen with his name and his phone number, but it's underlined by yellow lines and it's all red. It's just the usual stuff when you try to show something without a scaffold or without even a material widget. So it works, it works, but not pretty. So for that, we can literally just here in the material page route, we can do scaffold here. And this can be the body of the scaffold. Oh no.
Right, so then doing it in this way, where we have the scaffold in the material page route, we can make sure that the person detail widget is still only responsible for rendering and building the details of a person. It's not worried about the scaffold, it's not worried about the theming, it's not worried about anything else, only person details. And then our page route can handle the scaffold.
Correct, yes. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to center it. Now, we could do a bunch of things. We could even kind of inject to person detail like the context, as in we could say, hey, person detail, here's the person, and here's what I want you to do. You should draw yourself as if you are your own widget. Like we could definitely have an if-else statement here, and it could be something like if standalone, then add the scaffold. And because I can imagine, for example, if you have a standalone page, you might want to have the name of the person in the app bar, right? And I'm not sure if you want to have that here in the homepage state. We might want to have like the person detail thing or somewhere else, or we could have a different widget altogether. But I think it kind of works now. If I go again here, why am I not seeing it? Wow, I did something wrong, apparently. Oh, I know what. This should be main axis alignment is not alignment, axis alignment, center. And now beautiful page with just Clement Waters' name and his phone number. And no way to go back. We could add at least that. All right. So so far, so good, I think.
Yeah. So that this app bar you're adding in, with
It's
that,
just there so that we can go back in a way that is happy.
right? Okay, makes sense.
Yes. So all it does is it adds this app bar here, the blue one that you don't see, and it has the back button added intelligently because it knows that there's a route to go back to. All right, so this was all. We've just done the easy part, the one way to display it. And now, what if we want to do the other one, the more everything is in one place. Now, how do we want to start with that? So first of all, I guess the important part is we have a widget for this. It's called, well, we have two different ways to do this. One of them is media query, which is when you are asking, as a whole, the app, what does it look like? Is it a big screen? Is it a small screen? So and so on and so forth. Layout Builder is more context sensitive. Like if you run a Layout Builder in a small modal window, it doesn't know where if everything around is a huge space. It just gives you the layout that is currently where it is currently in, right? I think it makes more sense because at some point I could imagine that even this that we're gonna write, this kind of list detail split, is part of a larger whole that is even larger. And maybe at some point we want to say, okay, so we don't have the space for, even though we are on a 4K monitor, we don't have the space to do that thing. So we want to use a layout builder. And now, where do we put it?
That's why I just pulled up the layout builder documentation. Looks like it needs to be pretty high in the widget tree. But the samples at least have it underneath the scaffold as the first thing underneath that as the body.
Okay. Okay. So let's do that.
Start there. The builder that it takes, the two parameters it requires are the context and the constraints.
Okay. And from the constraints, if I understand correctly, we'll get the size, right?
So, right. Yeah, it's a box constraint, so that'll give us the height and the width.
Great. This is exactly what we want. So, Layout Builder is conceptually, I think, pretty simple widget. It just rebuilds anytime the layout around it changes, right? So anytime, for example, you switch the orientation of your screen, that changes the layout, that changes the constraints of the whole app, basically, for us. And therefore, we will rerun, or this builder will be rerun with a new context, or the same context probably, and new constraints. And you can use it in many different ways. It's not just for adaptive things. It could be that, I don't know, you want to have a red app bar if you're like this, and or I don't know. But for us, we do this. And I think the cleanest possible way to do it would be to just say something like, if constraints, if I can write constraints, and you have a lot of different, again, you don't see it, right?
Correct.
Do you see it?
I see the code, not your...
Right. So we have a lot of little fields on constraints, like has infinite width, is normalized, is tight. I have no idea what any of that means. It also has the biggest, which is the size. If we use the whole screen kind of, or the whole area, like what is the size of the of that? So I think we'll use that as a size. I mean, as there's max height and max width, min height, min width. All right. So the easiest thing is probably if the width is above some threshold. So if max width is more than, I have no idea, 400, I'd have to test this. Then return desktop layout. Or no, wide layout.
So this notion of setting these effectively hard-coded width sizes, this notion is something called breakpoints in other contexts for responsive design. And these are just commonly accepted approximations for what constitutes wide layouts versus narrow layouts. So there's no so you as your app designer can decide what what those values actually are, what makes sense for your data. Since we're doing a fairly typical list detail layout, this is pretty common, so we can use pretty common values, and 400 is approximately the difference between a mobile and something else.
Right. Hopefully, let's test it, but
we can also see how it looks and then change them.
Yes, exactly. So as a terrible hack, I will just return narrow layout from wide layout for now. Except I will wrap it with something like container. I just want to see when the breakpoint kicks in. So colors red. Probably, yeah, okay. So we're now already in the wide layout. So let me change this to 500. Okay, so about 500 device. We're always talking in Flutter. We're always talking about device independent pixels. So this is basically like a measure, like in centimeters. It should be very similar on all screens, and it doesn't care about your resolution. It cares about like the physical size of the screen. And so I think I would even maybe make it maybe 600 if 400 was too small. And now, if I remember correctly, I can rotate the device like this. And see, if I rotate the device, again, Fitz can't say it, but you can. As I rotate it, then this is the wide layout with the red background. This is the narrow layout with a white background. So we're already there. This is like the adaptive thing, right? We're adapting our screen or our app somehow to wide layout. And so, okay, so we're just, I think I'm just gonna, there is probably a better way. Is there a better way to do it than to just copy paste this and make a new one?
I mean, if we could factor out the list view into its own widget,
yeah,
that would be helpful, because then our narrow layout, each one of our layouts only needs to say, here's where the list view goes, here's where the detail view goes.
Right. And then it just basically there needs to be some callback where the white layout says just change this, and the narrow layout says push this. Yeah, okay, I like that.
Yep.
Okay, so this would be, naming is hard. Fitz. What's the widget called?
People list.
People list. List of people. And that's just a list view. Doesn't need to be centered. Okay. And people list needs void callback, or is it void callback? Yeah, I think so. Basically a function that says, oh no, it's not, it can't be a void callback. So it's a function that takes a person and is called person tap callback.
And what is your goal with this callback? What is this one?
So this is, wait.
In the
Yeah, this is basically what I want to add here to on tap. Oh, you I don't know if you see it.
yeah, okay, yep, I see your selection.
Yeah.
This code together thing is interesting. So it would be that this callback is used to tie the detail and the list together to make sure we have both the same thing selected on both.
Yes,
Got it.
so that narrow layout and wide layout can do their own thing, because that it's going to be different. We can't hard code the navigator off, because then the wide layout would look weird. You would select something and it would create a new screen. I mean, unless you're thinking of somehow overriding the navigator and showing in wide layout the new the new thing in the window next to the first one. Am I making sense?
I think that's similar to what I was thinking.
It would be more elegant. It would be more elegant to just say to the navigator, "Hey, we're going to person, Fitz," and it would just replace that part of the screen, or create a new page on the stack. So I don't know.
Right. I think I'm seeing now where you're thinking with the callback, where in the narrow layout it would do this new page route onto the navigator, and in the wide layout you don't really need the callback. It just kind of updates.
You do, because the wide layout needs to update the other part of the screen, right? If I tap Clemens, then it should show on the right hand side.
Right. And this is can be sometimes where state management comes in, because then it would be nice if that on the wide layout that widget isn't replaced, the state just gets updated.
Yes. Let's do the hacky thing first.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Always fine with the hacky thing. Let's do it. Hack it all together.
All right, so this is final, and then people list takes this callback. I think I'll make it a required named parameter, this person tab callback. It should be probably named on person tab, just for consistency. All right, and here so narrow layout basically just has the people list in it, which is great.
Right.
Person list, people list. and it does exactly this. Does it scroll for you, for example, on?
It does. It's the sharing scrolls enough for me to keep up.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so this works, and then this is basically on person tab person. This looks pretty good to me, and it still works. I'm just clicking around to see that everything works on the normal layout. And now let's do the wide layout. So wide layout will now be a row, right? It's a row.
Right. And it'll have the people list on one side and initially nothing / an empty person detail.
Yes. So it will be a flexible. Let's not think about it yet. So it has the first one on the left is the people list. And we will not do anything first with the person when it's tapped. And the other thing on it would be just a container or a placeholder.
Right.
All right, so oops, and we get an error. Null check operator. Okay, what's going on here? Of course, render view box. Oh yeah, so the classic vertical viewport was given unbounded width. So what we do with this is we are gonna say that this will be, I think this will be expanded with a flex of 3, and this will be expanded with a flex of 2. And it works. So we now we can't do anything in the list, but now it renders correctly. Fitz can't see it, but you can imagine how great it looks. Yes.
And this, in my mind, is kind of getting a little bit into the difference between adaptive design and responsive design, right? Where we started with the adaptive design and we said, okay, we are going to make our app such that it can adapt to different sizes, whether our window is this big, whether our window is this big, however big it needs to be. But then within that, it depends on our content, and it depends on what our content does, and like we don't really care how much it takes up. We just want it to be like this thing is 2/3 of the screen and this thing is 3/3 of the screen, or whatever it needs to be, whatever the ratios are. And that's really the more responsive part of it, saying we're going to change things around. We're going to be flexible. We're going to expand into the space that we require based on some settings. And that's what the flex factors are doing here. And that's to me really the difference between responsive and adaptive.
Yes, I agree. Let's finish the winding up because I think we're very close. And then I think for now I'm pretty happy with this. So we can take it for another spin in the next episode maybe of The Boring Show and make sure that this actually works and looks well on desktop or what have you. But for now, also we could look at the navigator because I really like the idea of like having it, like especially with the new navigator. Ooh. where you can deep link into the state of the app where we have selected Fitz as a person and we see his detail there. All right, but first things first, let's just make sure that this actually works. So if the person in wide layout, okay, so it needs to be a stateful widget now, wide layout, right? Because I mean, some state needs to be set so that white layout knows what to show.
Yeah, so we know which person is selected, and
Exactly.
therefore we can tell the people list where to go, where to scroll to, and then the person detail which one to show.
Yes. So this is already very, very nice, because if the person is null, then equals null, then it's placeholder, and if it's not null, then it's a person detail. Right?
I think you have an extra underscore. You have a misplaced underscore in 2 places.
Wow, that's more than usual. where did I?
Line 57. You have your type defined as person underscore.
Yes. Well, I want this to be. It's not a type. Or maybe you see a different version than I. But I have person underscore person. Like my person wants to be private.
I might be seeing something different, because I see person underscore space underscore person.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's code together, acting up.
Okay. I'll trust that your view is showing the right thing then.
Yes. All right. So that's one thing, but we're not setting it. The way we are set it is so simple now. It's just set state and person is now person. That was clicked, right?
Yep.
And now we have an error.
Oh, cool.
Oh no, this is because okay. So this is. It trips me out every time, but unfortunately there is nothing much that we can do about it. If you hot reload something and you change your widget from stateless to stateful, it'll crash, or it will just not hot reload. So if you see something like this, type is not a subtype of stateless widget, and you just change something from stateless to stateful, this is why you have to, unfortunately, hot restart. But now, all right, and we have like a full-blown contacts app, and I'm going to make a lot of money by putting it on the App Store. So this is great, and I'm just changing this. I mean, I'm rotating the screen, and it still is adaptive. And I see one problem with this is that we are losing the state as we move to the narrow view and then back to the wide view. We're losing the state of the selected person.
Right. So we're probably rebuilding all the widgets, and then the state gets dropped.
Yes.
Because we're rebuilding something higher up than our state full widget.
Correct. And so, which is the wide layout state. And this is to be expected, and this is something that we would either fix by having the navigator do the right thing, or having an actual state management approach where we are not just using set state, but we are actually changing the kind of the state of the app.
Right.
But yeah, this is how you do adaptive layout. I think we want to touch on like using flags in the next episode and stuff like that, because it's not just if else statements. Flutter gives you a lot of options of how to make things. How do you call it? Is it not? It's not adaptive design. Is it flexible design? What do you call it when you're using flex?
I think that's responsive. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's also a good point to emphasize is we really only have one if statement in here, and that's to define our breakpoints on whether we're doing the wide versus the narrow, and that's it. There's no other if statements. We don't have to worry about really any other configurations there. Everything else is hopefully, when we get to more flexible designs, a little bit responsive.
Yes. I have nothing more to add. Do you have something, Fitz?
I don't think right now. I think for the next episode we can dive more into other things. Because everything else that I can think of is like kind of involved. So maybe we leave that for the next one.
Great. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope that this this answers some of your questions, and see you next time.
All right. Thanks, Philip. We'll see you next time.